My name's Chris.
And I'm late for a very important podcast.
This is the Washing Up Podcast. This is a day late Washing Up Podcast. Although, to be fair, you've already had two, so...
I am also Kristie, not a white rabbit.
Yeah, you've already had two podcasts this
Greedy
week. So,
fuckers.
this is bonus content. That's what we're here for. Right, bonus content.
I thought you said boners content.
I mean, look, boners are normally content, I'll give you that. So... Obviously, we are late. We are late for a very important date.
I'm just not being well. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah, and before...
Not COVID. It's okay.
It's not COVID, that's the first thing. And before people comment, it's not the bugs that I put up on or the dinner that I cooked the other night for Kristie. Neither of those two things poisoned her.
No.
It was cold and flu, unfortunately.
I just got a bit chilled.
Yeah, and...
earlier in the week, and my sinuses went, fuck you.
And it would have been, when we did the podcast, like, for example, if we'd done it last night as per normal, it would have been... my name's Chris, and then it would have been Kristie going,
Whatever. Sleep
cooking.
now. Yeah.
I mean, nudging Kristie while she's going, what? So, all right, so we obviously...
do that tonight anyway.
Well, the benefit is we only have to cover 2 episodes, not 3, because we covered 3 the other night, because
we did.
This week's been so out of sync.
It has. We're just not in rhythm.
By the way,
there's no rhythm method in this podcast.
There is no rhythm method in this podcast. Anyway, more importantly than all of that, no rhythm method being in the podcast, thank you very much, everyone who wishes a happy anniversary. That was really nice of you all. Thank you.
Years ago.
We did. But enough about that. Enough about that.
We're speaking about that. We're moving on.
Enough about us.
Moving right along.
Enough about us. Let's get to anecdotes about us. So, let's get into the episodes. So, the first episode, I'm not going to lie, I kind of at the start was questioning the whole mentality of giving them the photos right at the point where no one can come into physical contact with anyone else.
It was, how can I put it? I think it was cathartic, but I remember what it was like when we all first went into lockdown. I remember doing one last trip over to my younger sister's house to drop off groceries because her partner's just got out of hospital. She's got 2 young children, and I was really worried about her not having groceries. I mean, my dad was threatening to come down from the mountains.
So that sounds weird.
With toilet paper.
Just with nothing else.
Nothing else, just toilet paper. No, shit. No, I shit you not. That's what his trip was. He ended up sending it in a package anyway because I said, Mum, Dad, there's a mail. Because you see, my dad lives out, Dad, he lives out in the middle of the fucking
I like the way you look at me and go, Dad. Yes, I do.
Yes. The listeners probably don't. They know
I
more
probably
about
don't.
my
They
mum.
might.
Some of you might. But anyway, my dad lives out in the middle of nowhere, and every time he's near a town, he panics about what he has at home. So for the past few years, he's been bringing home a little extra toilet paper and a little extra paper towel, to the point where if you went to his house now, you'd swear he was one of those hoarders.
Yeah, now he wasn't a hoarder because of COVID. He was just generally concerned.
just forgetful and panicky whenever he was in civilization. It was like, I've got to have toilet paper and I've got to have Thai food. So, yeah.
I'm surprised that he doesn't have like a cupboard just full of like stored Thai meals. Like he's like come up with some way to like preserve them.
Well, I was a bit worried because he wanted to go to Thailand for a holiday, and I'm like, he'll never come home. He'll just like buy a house next to like his favourite Thai restaurant over there and never come home.
He probably would have just stayed there in all honesty.
Yeah.
Cheaper for a start.
Yeah.
So this was about the idea of, it was about cooking your heritage and cooking your past and sort of using your past and your heritage.
Oh, and before I got off track, I was like, we remember how intense that time was,
yes.
Of how worried we were for our loved ones. And I'm like, fuck, and they've been away from them, in the Masterchef bubble. And ta-da, have a box full of love and memories and trauma from your childhood.
And trauma in some cases, yeah. So... we had a situation where they all had to cook something from their past or something that inspired them. There were some moments in the photos that I really enjoyed. I mean, Simon's frog cake, I feel like we never got the full reveal.
I'm disappointed about that.
I'd like to feel like that was the moment that Simon turned to vegetables. There was a frog in the cake and he's gone, fuck that for a joke. I know what I'm going to eat, vegetables.
He's like, who eats frogs? And his mum and dad turn to him and go, the French too. He's like, what?
Yeah, I know.
But the poor frogs. Like cauliflower is
I
my
wonder if Simon got that cake because his favourite song was "Hello, my baby, hello, my honey, hello, my ragtime gal," and like he just used to recreate the frog from the cartoon.
Yeah,
and so that frog is a recreation of that. I'd like to find out. So if anyone can like poke Simon and ask him that question, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're his favourite.
because he's a big Kermit fan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're his favourite people after talking about his filleting abilities, or
no.
But you know, look, to be fair, Simon, in all fairness.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
Not just us. Everyone, when they see you fillet a fish,
still worry.
Kind of shits themselves. Yeah. The other one I loved was Reese's looking at his photo and holds it up to the gantry and Amelia and goes, "I'm Butch."
I'm wearing a hat.
It was a helmet.
I'm wearing a helmet. Like, I'm sorry, Reese, but there was no effort in that Easter hat parade day. Like, what the fuck was that? Like, I'm just going to wear a construction helmet, or was it an ode to the village people? Like, was he getting in early?
Maybe. I mean, look, I like the idea of a helmet being Butch. I find that quite amusing.
Well, a helmet isn't necessarily something that you'd go, oh, that's very feminine.
No, it's not feminine, but it's definitely not. I wouldn't look up as Butch either. I just call it safety.
Very safe as a child.
What he should have done is hold it up and held the photo up to the gantry, looked at Amelia and gone, "Look at me, protected." Like it's more a valued protection than anything else is what they gave him. Now they also talked. Reese talked a lot about the cake and the fact
Nana's
that
cake.
his nana was making, in particular, that his nana used to make the fairy cakes.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Oh, like your aunt Elaine. Oh my God, these cakes. She calls them angel cakes.
They're angel cakes.
They're
yes.
angel cakes.
But they're the same thing. Like, so
They're just little cupcakes.
you make the cupcake, you scoop them out, you put the cream in there, you put them back on, you dust them with icing
Like little
sugar.
wings. You cut the little thing you've popped out in half, so they look like the wings, and you pop them back in.
Yes, and then and you dust them with icing sugar.
Oh, so what do you call this stuff on top?
Icing sugar.
Oh, yeah.
And they are kind of highly addictive.
Yeah.
My cousin Kate frequently will, she's known to turn up at functions if there is a guarantee that Elaine is making the cakes.
I'm pretty sure it's the reason why she came to our wedding.
I'm fairly certain that she knew Elaine was making cakes, and that was the reason why she came to the wedding. I'm
Yeah.
100% convinced of that. Mm-hmm. But well, it was really nice because they're talking about that, and we'll come back to Reese in a minute because I do want to talk a bit more about the cakes. I want to talk a bit more about that. But most of the focus on this episode, online and otherwise, has gone on the idea of the representation, and in particular representation for people of different Southeast Asian backgrounds.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see, people come along who are from, culturally diverse backgrounds and break that down more, particularly for, a white Australia audience, because we are still getting better at what we understand and our knowledge. So I love this, snapshot that would just fucking make so many One Nation voters cringe.
What I liked about it, and look, we're not going to go ultra deep into it because again, it's not our experience to go deep into.
No.
But just what I liked about it, for example, is you had a raft of different things. You had Reynold's parents, who were the diligent, business owners, immigrants out here working as hard as they could, and all of those sorts of things that came with that, and the hours they were working, and the way that sort of did impact their relationship early on, and the way it impacted him growing up. And then
you had Poe.
Then you had
whose
Poe.
Dad had a golfing trophy.
Had the golf trophy. And
was a muso.
And as she said at one point, when she goes, "I can imagine my dad tasting this dish," and you go, "That's fantastic, but what happened to the broth?" And I like that idea. And then you go to Khan, who the photo that Khan had was from the day that he really got to Australia from the refugee camp.
God, that hit my heart.
You had a huge array of sort of representation, and it's been big this year, and it's been good because you've seen a lot of these dishes made sort of in the MasterChef kitchen, and it's been a really joyous thing to see, and especially having Melissa in there as well, which helps to sort of make it again rather than, I feel, and not a shot at the three previous judges on this front, but if they're giving this story to Matt, Gary, and George, they're not empathising to the same level as a Melissa, and even Jock and Gary, because Jock and Andy. Andy's, but especially like Jock had come out here from overseas Scotland, as well, so via France, and Andy likes a barbecue. So, and it says banging a lot.
Yeah.
But no, I think having Melissa, in particular,
able to like smell those dan noodles, and you can just see it on her face. She's being transported back to, when she's like, oh God, I'm so sorry. My brain is even worse than normal. Khan's dish, the rice, the congee, and she's like, it's so similar to the congee that I used to have.
Yeah.
So, just it's wonderful because it normalizes food that is normal for like over 1 billion people.
Well, the thing is, like, when Khan said he was making the chicken congee, he said the reason he's making the congee was because they used to make the congee because it used as much of the chicken as humanly possible.
Yep.
And that's, again, it's making use of every skerrick of food. And I mean, it's something that people talk about a lot is the idea of global food security and things like that. And and when you look at the statistics, around the world, and I'm not going to get deep into a sort of deep thing here, don't panic. But when you look at the statistics, for example, that in the early 2000s, and I don't have the exact figures in front of me now, the amount of food that was wasted in the Western world, the Western sort of the Western industrialized world, is only 10 million tons more than the entirety of what's produced in sub-Saharan Africa. Those sorts of things, food security-wise. Food security is big around the world, and we don't tend to have that experience in countries like Australia.
Well, it's like,
so it's good to learn all this sort of stuff.
And it's like something I learnt during COVID is that Australia is fine. If we shut our borders, we produce like 3 or 4 times or something ridiculous the amount of food that we actually need.
Yeah.
So it's really, our production and our food security here in Australia is quite safe. I mean, it might not be specific stuff that we have to import, but overall, like, we're cool as cucumbers, and we're so fucking lucky. And I think that's something that Khan's family would have brought. I mean, it's something common that, we've all got. I say we've all got because I presume people have as wide a variety of friends as we do. We've all got the friends whose like family came from a migrant background, whether it's Italian or Lebanese or African or whatever, whose parents were so like overwhelmed by the maybe not so much the Italians, but like overwhelmed by
the Italians were sending tomatoes out from Italy going, it's not good enough. Must try harder. Where the fuck are my San Marzanos? Where are my San Marzanos?
I cannot make a passata with these shit Australian tomatoes.
What do you call this sickly sweet piece of shit? Why is it round for a start?
Why can I make a drink of water out of half of it? Like it's
when I blend it, it shouldn't turn pink.
Yes. But we do have a history of immigration in Australia. I mean, there's also a history of invasion, but I don't want to touch on that because we're focusing on the stories being told in the kitchen tonight, which are about different people coming to Australia in different ways, whether it's through a refugee program or through an immigration program or, having been, born here like 3rd or 4th generation Chinese.
And also,
like
I mean, also that does include some people from the British Isles as well. You got to remember the whole idea of the 10-pound poms and the post-war era.
Yeah.
Right? In the post-war era, everyone who came out here was damn well running away from something, usually blown up houses and buildings and lack of food.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Like the abundance that Australia has in food is quite fortunate. So people who came from other places, and again, like even some of those traditional sort of British style dishes that we look at and go, oh yeah, it's boring British food. But a lot of that boring British food relied on the fact that it was making use of everything you had, like reusing dripping 6, 7, 8 times. It wasn't just for the flavour, right? It wasn't just for the flavour, regardless of what my grandmother might have tried to convince us out of the dripping tin that she kept in the fridge.
But that said, this is about, people who've got access to different flavours and spices and stuff.
Actual flavour.
The actual flavour.
Real flavour, not that imagined dripping flavour we're talking about. So while we're not, obviously, as I just said there is a sort of a wide variety of backgrounds, including European migration backgrounds. What we saw here is something that we haven't seen a lot of, traditionally on Australian. More and more, and we've seen more and more of it in the food. We should probably get into the food because my only complaint about this episode was that I actually thought the producers left the food out too much. And I love the stories, and the stories are important, and the stories needed to be told. It's one of the rare times, though, where I will say that I would have actually been okay with a little bit more episode because I felt like the dishes in this episode looked amazing, and we really didn't get a huge snapshot of it. And they also did go. They did go back, and I understood the reason, but they went back to a couple of stories 3 or 4 times. Didn't say anything new. They just repeated them again.
Yeah, like Reynold's story, which
it was heartbreaking.
That was heartbreaking, and it fucking hit close to the bone for me because when I was around the same age as him, I was also a latchkey kid. I'd leave on my own, I'd come home on my own and be expected to do chores and stuff because my younger sister was an elite gymnast. My dad worked night shifts, my mum worked full time, and when when they weren't working, they were driving my sister to and from training. So I barely saw them, and they provided for me. It's very complex. So I understand Reynold with this whole complex thing of being by yourself, having to make do, but it's so fucking lonely.
Yep.
You deal with shit at school and you come home or you're in a space where you've got no one to support you.
But the problem, the only issue I had though with it was that they went back and they didn't say anything new about the story. They just kept repeating it like they were trying to drum it into your brain. I was like, we understand how sad that is. You don't have to keep drumming it into our heads. We get it. We know. It's horrible. And it's horrific. And it felt like they were almost, I don't want to use the word exploiting Reynold, but it felt a little bit like that.
It's like, here's your fucking childhood trauma. Make something awesome of it.
And then when they got to the judging of Reynold, I felt really bad for him because they kind of said, channel that in the future and keep that with you. It's like, no. Don't stick with the trauma.
You don't have to be a tortured artist. You can actually be a fully healed person.
Enjoy yourself.
And still probably make better shit because you're not, coping with the crap.
So let's get into the food, shall we? Because, Jess decides that she's going to make a Ferrero. Now, first of all, can I just point out, I like the fact that she said, I'm going to make a Ferrero Rocher. And they didn't actually have to credit Ferrero. The company didn't sue. The company didn't clarify, although I wonder if Jock's statement at the end was kind of a catch-all when he went, that's nothing like a Ferrero. We'll come back to that in a minute, though, because that's going to reflect some other judging moments in history. Mm-hmm. But it was actually nothing like Ferrero. The second she goes, it's going to be like a Ferrero, but there's going to be a passion fruit centre. I'm like, well, that's not a Ferrero. There's no hazelnut.
That's not even a Raffaello.
It's not now. I do want to sort of, at this point, let's mention it. So Andy talked about he had a close attachment to Ferrero's because they didn't get a lot of chocolate in his place. They didn't get a lot of sweets in his place. But he said his mum used to sneak them a Ferrero. Now, I've got a couple of questions on this.
His dad had chocolate,
chocolate larceny was a thing?
His dad was just kind of like, no chocolate in this house.
I've got him pictured like an Adam Ant, sort of, stand and deliver your money or your life. But stand and deliver your Ferreros or your life. And he's either Adam from Adam and the Ants in the 80s and singing as a highway bandit, a dandy highwayman, so to speak, robbing people of their Ferreros off the stagecoach. Mm-hmm. Or it's Dennis Moore from the Monty Python sketch where he just steals lupins and the flour and doesn't steal jewels or gold or anything. He just steals the lupins.
Yes.
And just keeps taking them to the poor people. And they're like, have you brought us food, medicine, jewellery, something? What have you... Lupins! Oh, we've got bloody lupins, stew, lupin clothing, we eat lupins, we bathe in lupins. I like the idea that maybe Andy's dad was just a bit confused and thought the Ferreros were currency because they were wrapped in gold foil.
You keep that foil, we'll be rich in no time.
But that's kind of the closest that Jess actually got to them actually being a Ferrero.
They looked like it.
But did you have a favourite Ferrero? It sounds weird to say.
Just a normal Ferrero, just a plain normal. I think the Raffaello's, it's white chocolate, got no time for it.
Well, see, that's the thing. I like white chocolate, but I don't like Raffaello's. Or Donatello's. Or Michelangelo. I know I like Michelangelo's. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Michelangelo's.
He's the ENFP of the group.
Everyone loves Michelangelo. Him. Yeah. But, we had my aunt, the same one who used to make the angel cakes.
Yeah.
She used to have a lot of Ferreros, so I used to get a lot of Ferrero shares. Oh. And it was always... a bit of a treat.
Oh, yes.
They were always a treat. Not now when you go to the supermarket and you buy Ferreros for someone as a present because they're really fucking cheap in comparison. Mm-hmm. But you'd you have a bit of a Ferrero. Mm. I always equated it to the upmarket shops like David Jones.
Yes.
Which, again, children's perspectives on things. Fantastic.
Look, I have no problem with Jess and what she made. Like,
No, it wasn't a
delicious.
Ferrero.
A Tia Maria, like, outside.
That Tia Maria. Oh,
and just
I'm here for that.
That gooey passion fruit.
I would have sold the Tia Maria a little bit more. In all honesty.
I would have.
But like with just quickly before we move on, they have the other flavoured Ferreros. There's one with like the chocolate sprinkles on the outside as well, the dark chocolate sprinkles on the outside. I can't remember what the fuck they're called.
Don't care what they're called.
Someone will let me know. No, they're actually quite good.
What?
They're really good.
I
have not seen them in a very long time. Ferrero briefly diversified before they went back to making two types of chocolate.
Okay.
And one of them was this one with like the dark chocolate sort of sprinkle. If anyone remembers what the fuck they're called, please let us know.
They're probably called like Donatello's.
That'll be good. Yeah, that'll be fantastic. So Poe. Mm-hmm. Okay. So notice how I just say Poe and take a breath. Yep. There's a lot to take in. First of all, Poe once again is making everything.
Yes.
She's doing the Dan Dan noodles. That's fantastic, wonderful.
And
Talks about, but then she's making also the lotus flower broth. Mm-hmm. And I need that lotus flower broth because it's my family staple. But also I need to make this because that's my family. And also this because that's what. And also this. And it's fantastic and it's wonderful and you're damn right, Poe.
And I'm making a Pluto cup because that's my dad's favourite treat when we go to the
and
Easter
I'm
show.
making some golf clubs because he won that trophy. And we're serving it in a trophy. Look. The biggest problem for poor Poe was she comes up with all this idea of what to do and then kind of hilariously forgot to turn on the pressure cooker.
Oh, and it only needed half an hour in the pressure cooker.
Just when Poe is going through it and you're like, oh my God, there's a lot to do.
She's on fire. She's
There's a
doing
lot to do, but she's got her shit together and she's finally picked something that doesn't take too long. She fucking forgets to turn the cooking stuff on. Now, I'm starting to really wonder about Poor Poe. We've called her the avant-garde artist of our times.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the idea that she's very avant-garde and she's very artsy and clearly she's out there. But I'm starting to just wonder if maybe the whole time is getting to it. Let's go through the drinking game, shall we? Because I think Poe in Peril is a good time to do it. Reference to lockdown and COVID. Oh, boy. Lots of it. Kingfish. As you'll see in a minute with Callum, you better fucking believe there was kingfish. The Vespa, it was there. Yeah. Beetroot.
No.
I thought it was beetroot earlier in the week, so we hit that earlier in the week. Poe in Peril. Yep. Yuzu. No. We hit matcha a bunch of fucking times, it turns out, and we'll get to that in a minute. And matcha is next. So we hit matcha, not yuzu. The hibachi earlier in the week, not now.
No, I'll get it. Yeah, we do. Callum cooked his stuff on the hibachi.
Oh, that's right.
Because it's all grilling Callum.
That's right. Because it's all about barbecues. That's right.
Callum's dad was a Luddite and refused to use technology.
Yeah, but then he talked about.
I'm surprised he used a mortar and pestle and just didn't grab a fucking rock and a slab.
I was about to say when he said
smashing it together.
When he said my dad only used the good old Aussie sort of male cooking tools like the barbecue and the mortar and pestle, and I'm like, mortar and pestle, that's fucking fancy. And someone scraps a whole dish and starts again. Well, Brendan did that the other night, as we said. So we basically ding 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 ding. Except for yuzu, we hit the whole fucking card.
So you're all drunk.
You're all really smashed and probably just recovering, and this episode's a recovery episode. So we did have a Dan Dan off. Because Brendan was also making Dan Dan. Yeah. Brendan's was traditional, Poe's was vegetarian.
So Brendan's Dan Dan was like angry and loud.
And led to Melissa charge up.
It's like just charging up, ready to like spring into action.
Now I want to talk Reese a bit more. Mm-hmm. Reese talked about the fact that he got his grandmother's recipe reluctantly. Now, that led me to a bit of a thought process because a lot of people I know, and a lot of people have this experience where the older members of the family or the guardians of the recipes don't really like to hand them over.
No.
You've kind of got to go through this rites of passage to get...
Or wait till they die and go foraging and then you find out that he wrote down half of it because the other half was in their brain.
I've got it up here. No one else can have it and I'll give it to you before I die. So the last thing that happens before they die, they're like, I got my coconut milk.
It's just like, oh, custard powder.
We'll come to the custard powder. So, but everybody, I think, has this. Why are these people so unwilling? Is it about prestige and about the role in the family? Or is it like, I'm sort of hypothesising here, they use batshit crazy ingredients and they don't want you to A, judge them, and B, not eat the food.
They've been used, it's like, and just a sprinkling of borax over the top to really give it that.
So my
bitiness.
mother has given me, there's a hand sort of done cookbook, which was a great grandmother's, I think. She'll correct me. She'll yell at me when she listens to the podcast, because she listens. She'll correct me, but there was a really old, like 1930s style cookbook, and some of the shit they're cooking with, it's very hard to find a page that isn't awful. And we come to that again, we talk about the idea of food security. Well, that's part of it. Before we actually produced a lot of shit, awful. But it's very hard to find something that's not awful, and it's very hard to find a time when they're not talking about awful in a way that's just natural and normal, which you wouldn't find today in a lot of recipes. And so when they pass those recipes down from generation to generation, and you're like, oh, that pie you make's really nice, can I have the recipe? And you find out it's a bunch of liver and intestines. I mean, you're probably not that inclined to continue eating the pie. I'm just going to put that out there. Yeah. Also, and this is where we're going to head to this, who knew that people in the past used that much custard powder?
Look, I get it because, what was it? I think it was the BBC show that was like The Kitchen Through the Ages.
Yes.
And it was...
Back in Time for Dinner.
Yeah, it was fucking brilliant, and it showed you how enslaved women were to the kitchen and how... they became freer and stuff later on, but it was because of things like custard powder and things that made it easier to prepare food. Like one of the greatest things, a refrigerator.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I get it. Like, and when I was a kid, I had no fucking idea that custard was made any other way than out of a box or gravy or that.
And we've talked about the eggs.
Yeah, like the plastic pavlova magic eggs. I had no idea that pavlovas could be made using actual eggs.
Real eggs. Who the fuck knew that? But no, I agree that it was sort of something that's like you learn over time, obviously. Yeah. And again, we've got more access to ingredients than ever before, and that's one of the reasons why. But basically, when you go through the sort of archives of things, every baked product under the sun was made using custard powder.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable when you look at the way cakes are made. Although it also explains why a lot of people don't like... Maybe that's why Andy didn't like cake.
Yeah.
Because there is a very much a samey texture to those cakes, and also there's a certain flavour.
Yeah.
And you could never quite put your finger on it. Turns out the answer is custard powder. Also, by the way, if you mix custard powder in weird quantities, it's a non-Newtonian substance.
Yeah.
Which means you can stand on it.
It's fantastic.
It's so much fun. You can stand on custard and not sink into it for a bit. It's brilliant. It's a great substance.
But we talk about this, and the greatest trifle for me is my mum's trifle, which is made using custard powder because she makes it a little bit thicker and it becomes almost a non-Newtonian mass.
It does.
As you're eating it.
It does. But my grandmother had, I'm sure was keeping them in business at one point with the amount of custard powder in her pantry. Yep. And I used to use it when I'd go out the back, and we had one of those Fisher-Price stovetop sets. And my grandmother, what we used to do was we used to go out the backyard with the Fisher-Price, and she'd give us a bunch of flour and a bunch of custard powder and a bunch of water and some cornflakes.
Yep.
And we'd sit there and we'd turn the fake stove on and we'd put it all in the fake plastic containers and we'd pretend we were cooking up a storm, and we'd try to feed everybody this
shit,
watery, floury, custard powdery, cornflakey substance.
Yum, yum.
Funnily enough, no one would eat it. We get deeply insulted that no one was eating our food. We'd think we could then go out and take this show on the road and maybe sell it to passers-by in the street. Never happened. For some reason, no one was interested in buying this shit. I can't work out why. Was it that there was no heat on the stove? Was it that what we were making was nothing? Was it that it was just flour?
And cornflakes.
And custard powder? Like, quite possibly. I ate a lot of dry custard powder when I was young. Why? Because while I was cooking, I'm like, well, the chef has to sample it, so in you go.
You were before your time. You knew you had to taste to make it perfect.
I wonder if that made me a non-Newtonian fluid.
I don't know. Let me stand on you. See
if you sink into me. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, back to the episode, because there was something else that happened that was amazing and remarkable. Amelia. Look, I love watching Amelia cook. I love watching Amelia in action. I think, she's one of my favourite contestants. I would love to see her go all the way in this series. I've said that now a number of times. But Amelia's gantry work...
Hardcore.
It was some of the greatest gantry work. And she was like selling at one point. She turns around and she goes, I'm the worst person to have up here. No, Amelia, you are the best person to have up there. It was understated. Mm-hmm. You didn't yell stupid shit. Yeah. You asked really good questions in a not annoying manner at all. Mm-hmm. So people were volunteering things to you. The crew must have been thinking, this is manna from heaven. Yeah. Normally they're like, shut up. With Amelia, they're volunteering stuff. Yeah. That was great. Amelia, the way that she interacted with the people down on the floor was great. When it got to the high-pressure moment, she didn't just yell stupid shit.
No, she yelled helpful stuff.
Yeah, like when they had to play their awkward music they had, that awkward music cue, which I love. When they're like waiting for the yelling and they cut up and there's Amelia just standing there and that's where she goes, I'm just the worst person to have on the gantry and looking down. She wasn't yelling, but I loved it. I was here for it. I thought it was refined elegance.
She's got a gantry game down.
The gantry game is strong. Anyway, Callum, we got some Callum background as well. Mm-hmm. Now, first of all, that fish that he caught.
Oh, it was delightful. It was huge. It was the tiniest fish I've ever seen. I think he could have got it and put it in a tank. Gave it a name.
I know it was too small for a tank. I don't know how it
bowl.
I don't know how it got on the hook.
Sure.
Like, in all honesty, as someone who comes from a family of people who fish, how did you keep that thing on the hook, Callum?
You think he'd not caught anything all day? Everyone else is catching everything. And he's like, Uncle just feels sorry for him or his dad and just puts one of the bait fish on the end of his hook and go, look, Callum! Oh, my God! Ta-da!
Maybe he cast accidentally into the bait box.
Yeah.
And no one had the heart to tell him. It wasn't that they hooked him.
No.
He went with one of those, you know how kids do that at times, and I'm talking from experience being a kid who did this at times. Mm-hmm. Big cast over the shoulder, massive wind forward, and like when I used to do that, the reel would go everywhere, or in one case, very famously, I dropped the entire line into Port Macquarie, and the next day some kindly fisherman fished it out for us, but like literally hooked it. But I wonder if he like did the big cast over the shoulder, he hooked it in the bait box. And everyone in the family went, don't tell him. Just let him believe. Let him believe. Like, we're never fucking going home.
Would you even feel it tug? Like, it was just that tiny.
Kind of a personal question.
Like, would you feel it tug? Is it in yet? Is it on yet? Is it out yet?
There's a couple of things we learnt a bit more about. So first of all, they went back and showed footage from Callum coming second.
Yeah.
And he was 19. And unlike Jess, he looked 14. Look, Jess looks young and has always looked young, but Callum didn't look like he should have been anywhere near a naked flame, public transport.
He's probably just learnt to use a spoon.
Yeah.
Need him near a real knife.
Like, I've never seen anyone actually look as young as he looked in that Masterchef, especially since he was walking in next to Adam Lior. So you've got Adam Lior, who looks like a fully grown human, and then you've got Callum, who looks like... Actually, I worked it out. You know who he looked like?
The work experience kid?
Squeaky voiced teen from The Simpsons.
Excuse me, sir, you dropped your snowball. Ouch.
You know, you have a taco. This comes out of my salary. If I had a girlfriend, she'd kill me.
I just remember watching that and remembering how shaky his hands were and thinking, is he actually going to get that into the cup? Because
I see kids having the exact same reaction to a HSC. Anyway, the other thing we learnt about Callum... Mm-hmm. Did you know?
What?
He has a business.
What?
Yeah, I know.
What kind of business does he have?
I think it's a cooking school.
No.
Seemed to indicate it was a cooking school.
Oh, I never heard of that.
So if anyone can tell us if Callum has a cooking school, I mean, please, by all means, let us know. We're really interested in that, and we'd like to know more about it. The third thing we learned about Callum is kingfish, because of course...
Look, his dad died, and that was a really moving tribute to him. I do feel he should have stressed it at the table, though. You reject this, and you reject my dead father.
See, I would do that. My problem would be... I would have an emotional story, and then I would sell the emotion to demand judgment.
You're an old school reality TV person.
Fuck yeah.
I deserve to win Big Brother.
I'm Johnny Fairplay when it comes to this. My grandmother died. It's so sad. Please put me through to the final, followed by the cutaway to Johnny Fairplay going, my grandmother's alive and well and watching TV and laughing her ass off at this. This is a ploy to get me voted through to the end. Like, I would do the same thing. I would talk about how my poor mother, passed away when I was 6. Yeah, Johnny Fairplay.
Oh, yes, that's
what I
right.
literally just said.
Sorry. Oh, my God.
And it's like, I would say, my mother, passed away when I was 6. And this was a really important dish to her. And then 2 weeks later, I would have no qualms talking about the fact that I've invited my mother to the grand final and introducing her personally to all 3 judges and telling everyone, my mother, look at her, right here, alive and well.
I will never win this now.
I don't care. I just want to say, suck it.
Look, for me, winning Survivor would actually mean not going there in the first place. So I take it that I've won Survivor.
I think we've all won Survivor. So
speaking of Survivor, who've got coconuts. Reynolds coconuts.
Have you ever seen people turn into children more than Andy and Jock when the spray booth was in operation? And there's a great bit of footage on a great gif on Twitter of Jock laying in Jock and Andy, and they're one's got their face up against the glass, and the other's spraying them through the booth. Yeah. It's just, but those two they're toddlers.
Well, it's because they've just seen the Reynold magic show. They've gone to Reynolds' bench, and what I thought was interesting is that Reynold chose the photo of him in a back room rather than the one of Hagrid walking through the door and going, "You're a wizard. You're a wizard." What does it call him? Harold. "You're a wizard there, Reynold. I'm going to take you to Hogwarts School of Culinary Delights."
I know. I thought that, though, it was interesting because I think Melissa was also being the grown-up. Jock and Andy they were kids.
Yep,
they were absolute
around.
Kids. Now, Poe also announced at this point in time that she was worried about her timings. And no shit, Sherlock is the answer to that. We also got, at this point in time, crazy running Jess.
She's the Flash. She is this streak of human just through, people will be doing stuff, and in the background you see Jess streaking through, and not naked, just a streak of Jess.
I love the moment when
she ran hair to pose tortoise. She ran so
fast at one point, and because the judges have all got to stand obviously distant from each other, they couldn't get all the judges in shot when Jess went through, so they just didn't move the camera. So you've got Andy and you've got Melissa standing there, and then you just see this flash of Jess in the background, and you hear Jock off camera go, "Keep running, Jess," and you see Jess take off up the kitchen.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck? And every time you turn around, if she's not at a bench, you just see this flash in the background.
she's got a pedometer on. She's getting her step game in.
Now, so we had, obviously, at this point, we had Jess running around the kitchen like a crazy woman. Reynold is getting his coconut. Now, we talked about the coconut, but we missed out on a great line when we were talking about that. Mm-hmm. So Reynold starts a national dance craze. When he says, "I have to dip and shake my coconut." I bet you do, Reynold. I bet you do.
It's like the what's he do on RuPaul's Drag Race? The dump. The dump.
Yes.
So this is the shake.
That's the equivalent of that.
The dip and shake your coconut.
Yes. Jess then also, look, we've had some callbacks to some classic moments. Everyone keeps on calling back to white chocolate velouté. But Jess decided to go to the other classic moment.
Yes.
All right. Now she writes, "Crack me open."
And we are here for it so hard.
But the problem was, first of all, it was funny that she was asking everyone, "Is that how you spell crack?" That was funny. But the other thing that was funny about it was she missed a trick because For Nathan was right there. And fucking Nathan needs to know there are dishes for him. He needs to know someone still cares.
Look, I just feel that it was enough of an homage to For Nathan.
Did you see a parsnip?
No, she elevated it to balls.
She elevated the parsnip to balls.
Yeah, because The
I know,
parsnip
it looks like a penis. We know.
So she made some balls to go with it. I mean, 3 is a bit too many, but...
No, but 3 is the magic
can't
number.
have the judges fighting over 2 balls. That would just look weird.
3 is the magic number. Now...
3 judges, 2 balls. It's not a... I don't Google that.
As we get to the end of this first episode, mercifully...
Look, is my talk of balls really that bad?
Well,
yes.
Yes. So Jock's level of excitement at Laura fucking up her pastry. Like, for all these people going, Jock is desperate to keep Laura in the competition. No. Jock was really happy to see Laura fuck up. It was brilliant because he's slagging her off from distance going, what are you waiting for? And she's like, oh, the pastry's still in the oven. He goes, it's not out yet. And you just sort of go, hoo, and he ran faster than Jess did. And he's just there going, what are you doing? They're not even brown. They're not even close.
He was just in time to see the pastries start their rendition of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend because they were so blonde.
They were that blonde.
I'll just start, going, this is my chihuahua. His name is Brewster.
So the other benefit for this challenge was that the celebrations, the COVID celebrations, like, they're going to new levels.
Yes, the high-fiving between Reynold and... oh, no, that was tonight, wasn't it? No, that was last...
That was tonight. We've watched the episodes in the wrong order,
Oh, that's
Kristie.
right, sorry.
For everyone wondering why it might be tonight references, is we actually, because Kristie was so sick the other night, we didn't end up watching the episode live. I watched bits and pieces of it, but we were mostly making sure that Kristie was okay. And so we watched last night's episode and the Thursday night episode, and then tonight watched the Wednesday night episode. Yeah. But they're getting better. Like Laura and they had their little handshakes and stuff like that. That was really cool. And I like the way the celebrations are coming along. They're coming along beautifully.
Yeah.
So
I did feel when they're like, we want to hug you, can't, but we can't. Like, oh... Like, here, we've dug up this really poignant moment in your past and going to make you cry, but we cannot hug you.
And the promo for this Sunday night is when they're talking, whoever's going home, where they're telling it as someone who everyone will be heartbroken about, is Melissa crying and going, we all really want to give you a hug, but we're legally not allowed to, and everyone being really upset. So... Well,
what they need to do is like that teacher in the US who I saw put up on different days, like she made a plastic kind of like hugging door, which had like... So her students could come along and she could give them a hug, and then she put up a new one the next day for the next student or something. It was very safe.
They could do that. They could all do that. Body condoms, much like the Naked Gun movie. Like, if you've ever seen The Naked Gun, the scene where Leslie Nielsen and Priscilla Presley, I practice safe sex, so do I, and they're in 2 full body condoms.
Yeah.
That.
They could all...
You've just remembered the scene, haven't you?
And the one from the goodies, when they're wrapped up in fucking white sheets.
There are answers, people. You might find problems, but where you see problems, I see solutions.
Yep.
So,
Naked Gun, giving good life advice.
There were a few moments in the judging I thought were really cool. Again, we said the Melissa power-up in the Brendan judgment was fantastic. Jock turning around to Poe and talking about the Szechuan oil with the phrase... She hot was something else entirely. And then Andy's childlike wonder when he cracked open the Ferrero and looks at Jess and goes, it's like an egg.
But it doesn't compare to the excitement all 3 judges had when Reynold brought up his coconut. Like, it looks superb. Like, it looks like a coconut that had been dropped on a beach. It was fucking brilliant. And then... he put the lime in the coconut, but it was actually pandan.
Yeah, it was pandan, yeah.
But it was still the colour lime.
Didn't stir it all up, though. Yeah, didn't stir it all around.
I did notice, I'm watching Jock plate that, I'm like, is he going to give himself the half or the quarter? I think he gave it to Andy.
He is the Puck of Masterchef. Like, he just sort of, in the corner, he just liked the food.
Was it, he was eating noodles, I remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was Poe's noodles or...
Yeah, it was the Poe noodles.
Yeah, and he's eating them, and Andy's like, well...
This will take a while.
So I'll just start.
Yeah. Also, Jock also had his Matt Preston moment tonight. So when they were tasting Jess's, Jock goes, it doesn't taste like a Ferrero Rocher, and they went to add. And I'm like, oh, God, we know what they're going to do here. And sure enough, they cut back and they go, it doesn't taste like a Ferrero Rocher, but it's one of the best desserts I've ever had. And that was right up there with Matt Preston's infamous, that's disgusting, throw the plate, it smashes and go, disgustingly good. It was his moment. And he needs his moment. Yeah. So obviously then they announced they couldn't take 4 through because that was too hard. Yep. They were taking 5 through.
To be honest, I didn't clock Tessa's dish.
I can't really remember what she did. It was mussels were involved.
Yeah. We forgot to mention Sarah's soup.
Well, that was the problem. They barely showed it.
I know, it was...
But this is what I mean in terms of my problems. My problem with the episode was that they had enough time to tell more of the food story.
Yeah.
And they went back to 3 or 4, and I know you've got to create a narrative, but the narrative existed. They could have got away with doing...
There was just not enough about... Like, I was looking forward to more about Sarah, maybe more about Jess's, family, more about Tessa's family, and we didn't get enough.
No, exactly. So...
All I know is that Sarah's mum made hot and sour soup, and I like how Sarah said, this is a rip-off.
Yeah. So we get into, obviously, then last night's episode. And last night's episode, then we have Khan. Mm-hmm. We have Jess.
Yeah.
We have Reynold. Mm-hmm. We have Brendan.
Yeah.
We have Poe. And by the way, no one was more surprised that Poe made it through than Poe, who went, what? And actually meant it. Because she only served up half of it, but what she served up was a whole dish still because she had 2 dishes planned.
Now, I think last night's, I'm just calling it crazy skilled Asians. It was fucking brilliant to watch. My other thing too is like, it's an episode that would make One Nation voters fucking turn in their little white coats or white hoodies, and because it's so politically fraught. There was something that came up when Reynold mentioned that his family moved here in 1997. That's the year I was graduating high school, and it was the peak of the Pauline Hanson bullshit. The whole, the Asian invasion, and they're going to take all our jobs, and just all this fucking racist rubbish, racist hate.
Thank you, Miss Pants Down.
A lot of xenophobia, and please explain. And to get to this point, and I know it's like, fucking 23 years later, where we have an episode of a reality TV show where it's just not a white face to be seen. Like, white people were outnumbered by Asian people. It's a One Nation person's worst nightmare, and I'm fucking here for it. Sorry. So back to the actual cooking competition, and less politicising and me just laughing.
So,
about that.
I was here for the idea at first that I really wanted to see an elimination gantry of Amelia and Khan.
Oh.
Because the balance would have been sensational. Measured, calm, control, and Khan. Who is none of those things.
Who said, I've told Amelia if I win the immunity, I'll be up there or we'll glam up for it. And I'm like...
You'll glam up. You'll glam.
Anyway.
So they announced that there was going to be about fairy tales. Now, we had a really good question actually come through on the Twitters.
Oh, the Twitters. They did a good thing.
They did a good thing as opposed to what we'll talk about shortly. Jan on Twitter said, what more obscure fairy tales would you have chosen for the challenge?
Red Rose and Briar Rose... what was it? Briar Rose and Rose Red is one. What would you have gone with?
Baker's Wife.
Yes, from...
Because then you could have fucking baked anything you wanted.
Thumbelina. I'm a Thumbelina
Rapunzel
fan.
could have been fun.
Yeah, but that's not obscure because fucking Disney have done it.
No, but it would have become obscure when you were trying to build a fucking tower in the middle of the Masterchef kitchen and trying to scale to your dish. Yeah. You could have had to climb to your fucking dish on a hair rope.
You know what would have been awesome? The red shoes.
The red shoes could have been great.
One to really fuck everyone over, the little match girl. Just something frozen.
I would have done Baker's Wife. Or I would have just said, I know it's not a fairy tale as such, but I would have just said Robin Hood, and then I would have walked around everyone else's bench and stolen stuff.
Robbing for the rich.
I'm not cooking anything. I'm going to work out what you've done that's really good, though. I'm going to steal it. That's all I'm going to do. So look, that would have been where I would have gone. So we'll get into the episode.
Yeah.
And then, so I had a couple of questions. So first of all, I thought when they were talking about Alice in Wonderland, I thought that there was a chance to make hallucinogens.
Why is a raven like a ratty?
And you could have made a caterpillar. You could have made a walrus and a carpenter
with oysters. Oh my god, so
little oysters. I always cried at that moment when they ate the oysters. Anyway, The time has come, the Law is said to speak of many things, the shoes of ships and sailing wax and cabbages and kings. Sorry, I love Lewis Carroll. Anyway, and you'll hear that in a moment.
Really?
I did also...
He was obsessed with a young girl.
No, I like the writing in that.
Okay,
I'm not talking about the person, all right? We're separating that out. Anyway... Okay. Soylent Green, I thought, it's not a fairy tale, but I don't care. You could have done Soylent Green.
But you don't even need to do Soylent Green because in the original Red Riding Hood, the wolf actually carves the grandmother up.
I know.
Pours her blood into the wine bottle, keeps some slices, so when Red Riding Hood shows up, he's like, oh, just make you a little supper, dear. And so she cooks up the wolf cooks up the grandma, feeds it to Red Riding Hood, and then just lets her drink some blood. So quite frankly, cannibalism could have been done.
I mean, I did
human flesh.
I did suggest with Goldilocks and the Three Bears that you could quite easily have just done like porridge with sliced bear.
Too literal?
Yeah, and I mean, one could have been like served rare, one could have been served medium, and one could have been served well done. That would have been fine for me. I would have liked that.
I would have liked to have seen Jess incorporate the something like, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's just right, and have
and we'll quickly
have some fucking hot chili in the big sphere, something like menthol or something in the middle sphere, and the small sphere just had like
a bowl of just right.
Yeah.
Now we'll quickly talk about everything else.
Okay.
And we're going to come back to Reynold.
Okay.
There's a reason. So let's go with Brendan first of all, because I kind of agreed with what the judges said about Brendan. And now this is going to be a lot more loose of a discussion than normal in terms of structure, because there's no real point, in all honesty, of being ultra-structured on this one. While I know that what Brendan made looked fantastic, there was zero link to any form of fairy tale.
Yeah, he said it was Beauty and the Beast because it was like the beast of a thing and the beauty is in the flavour. I would have said more it's like the ugly duckling and maybe have used duck in it.
Yeah, that would have worked.
Because then there's a bit more of a link.
I thought, though, that, and I agree, what the judges said when they did the judging of Brendan's dish was he had a dish in mind. Mm-hmm. He was looking for somewhere in the competition to make it.
Yep.
He didn't really have an idea for tonight and he kind of went, this'll do.
But he's made his grandma happy. And he can stop his grandma nagging him to, you should make these on Masterchef, Brendan.
Now,
Brendan, when are you going to make my spring rolls on Masterchef? Brendan, when you drop around the clothes I asked you to pick up from the laundry people, I want you to make those fucking spring rolls on Masterchef.
And pick up the custard powder, because everyone has custard powder, regardless of cultural background.
Yeah.
But Poe did the ugly duckling. Mm. No duck.
No duck. And
it was the tofu bloom. And I know, again, we talked about the idea of artistic Poe.
Yeah.
But, duck. It's right there.
It probably would have messed with it. And I honestly thought when I saw that in the ad, there was going to be a reference to Thumbelina because she gets stuck on a lily pad and is rescued. But, ducks live in ponds. Pond, duck, lotus, done.
I thought it was... Look, I thought they looked cool, but... Yep. I thought that the link was a bit tenuous. I also thought, by the way, and again, we're doing this in weird order, but for the judges, I thought the dumbest thing they've done all series was judging Reynolds second. Even if they did judge Reynolds second, they literally should have just moved the editing in this case to make it last because there was no point. Everybody in Australia, I think, felt sorry for poor fucking Poe because they judged Reynolds and then Poe walks up with her dish after they've been talking about Reynolds for a good 5-6 minutes and Poe's walking up with the dishes and all of Australia was like, why?
This really reminds me of the Eurovision moment where Tina Arena had to follow Michael Jackson on stage. Do you remember that?
No.
So in Eurovision, I think it was 99, 2000, very, very early on. Yeah. And Tina Arena and Michael Jackson both performed at a Eurovision thing. I can't remember what it was. Yes, I'm pretty fucking sure.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I know you're a Eurovision fucking...
I don't remember Tina Arena and Michael Jackson ever performing at Eurovision.
Maybe it was something else.
It was something else.
It was Tina Arena had to follow fucking...
World Music Awards, probably.
Probably. And had to follow Michael Jackson on stage. And here she is singing Chains.
No, yeah, it was the World Music Awards.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, and no one cared.
No, it's a fantastic song. She's a brilliant singer. Did anyone give a fuck after that time? No, they were still passing
There's a reason why you actually have to... There's a reason why... And the silly part about this is There's a reason why when they do those staggered dishes, they say you have to have an order for the dishes because you don't want to peak. And then everyone goes, well, after that, who the fuck cares?
Yeah.
Same thing. Khan made the Klad Kaka.
Yes.
So
he and his friends get together after.
They do.
He couldn't say this he put it on Twitter, so I think it's fair to say on here. After they go out to a poof doof.
Yep, after they go to poof doof in Melbourne.
Yes, they come back home, hang out and watch Disney things and make Club Kaka.
Now, I also mentioned this last night, but I have seen this before. And I'm like, where the hell have I seen this before?
Yeah.
And Khan, of course, former co-host of My Market Kitchen.
Delightful Elena Duggan.
Put this on My Market Kitchen last year. So there is a recipe on Channel 10's website if you want to have a look. Because I remembered it. Because I remembered it sounded weird. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And because I think I'm one of about 6 people who has watched every episode of My Market Kitchen with Khan and Elena, I remember it. So it's on the website. It looked amazing. It looked really nice.
Yeah, and, he's got a tale as old as time to go with it,
Oh, Beauty and the Beast.
we were hungover, so we decided to watch Beauty and the Beast. Like, quite frankly, I'm not a fan of Disney movies.
I don't really like Disney. No.
I'm not. I did in my younger days like a few things, but I got older and I went, nah, this is just not for me. The only Disney thing I like now is Star Wars.
I saw a couple of people.
And Marvel, because I have no fucking choice.
I saw a couple of people, by the way, who tried that dish today and it fell apart in the rendering stage, but they said it still tasted great.
The Klad
Kaka, yes.
Kaka.
They said it sort of fell into a like bunch of crumbs, but still tasted delicious.
Yeah.
That was the important thing. And obviously, so then we also finished with Jess, and we had she did the 3 bears, and she had the 3 small spheres.
Yeah, a few people were concerned that it was too much like her previous dish. If I see more spheres being stuffed again by Jess, I will call it out. But, look, she needed to do
that's
something.
That's okay. I look, again, you've got to be careful of those things, but it's fine. All right, let's get to Reynold. So.
Because everyone else is like, you're great, you're good, you're wonderful, you're talented, you're skilled, but you're not Magic Reynold.
Now, with apologies to Lewis Carroll, I'm going to begin this with a bit of a tale. Chris was beginning to get very tired of sitting by his Twitter on the lounge and of having nothing to respond to. Once or twice he tweeted a quip or an observation into the Twitter void, but it had no context or conversations in it. And what's the use of a tweet, thought Chris, without context or conversation? Yes, that is the opening of Alice in Wonderland, slightly tweaked. So obviously Reynold picks Alice in Wonderland. Mm-hmm. And he said that he has a dish and he's going to make this dish and he's going to call it Down the Rabbit Hole. Mm-hmm. And my memory twigged and I went, I'm sure he's done that at Koi. I was sure of it.
Yeah, because we follow him on Instagram.
Yeah, and I was sure.
Like, people who think Chris is like, maybe getting inside information or whatever, I can tell you, my husband has a memory like a steel trap, which is really fucking handy when his wife is so fucking, like, sieve-headed. Like...
So I'm watching it, and I before I tweeted anything out, I said to Kristie, I'm sure he's done that at Koi. And so I tweeted out, all I tweeted out was, and I did a search, and I was reading an article, and it talked in the article about the fact that his Alice in Wonderland degustation that he did.
Yep.
And talked about the fact that it opens with Down the Rabbit Hole. And they didn't describe exactly what Down the Rabbit Hole was, but they talked about the Alice in Wonderland degustation and this dish called Down the Rabbit Hole. And so I tweeted out, he's done this before at Koi, Down the Rabbit Hole. Then when they started to describe it, I was still digging, and I found a blog by somebody who did the Alice degustation. And at that point I found that what was Down the Rabbit Hole was a drink me thing. Mm-hmm. And so it was in a tube, and it wasn't the dessert that he was describing. So I retweeted out the thing and went, okay, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's not just using something that he's used before. It looks like it's a different thing, but I just want to point out to people, he's done an Alice degustation before. Keep your eyes out, but I'd like them to mention it. It wasn't a case, by the way, of, and at no point did I say you can't do that.
No.
All I said all the way along was just mention the fact that he did the night before. He talked about his dish was inspired by things he'd done in the restaurant, and it was stuff that he sort of did, but he was tweaking it.
Yeah, and everyone does it, and that's fine.
And every single person in the competition has used something they've used in a restaurant or cooked before. What I like is where they just briefly go, oh, yeah, I got the idea from here, but I want to do something better, right? Or I want to do something different. And so all I said was about, to give him the benefit of the doubt, it looks like it's a different dish. Here it is. Well, I joked last podcast that you do not say anything about Reynold on Twitter.
Oh, my.
Forget a joke. The messages, the direct tweets, the direct messages did not stop. We were inundated. And I actually took the original tweet down, explained it again. It said again, at no point have I said anything about Reynold. All I said was, I'm pretty sure he's done something like this at Koi. Then I went, okay, so he did an Alice-themed thing, but it wasn't this dish. So fine, not a problem. And again, all I'd want people to do is just sort of say, yeah, no, I had a theme of Alice in Wonderland at Koi once. Fine.
And maybe he did, and they didn't show it in the edit.
And this is the thing, I'm not saying that Reynold didn't say it, I'm saying that Masterchef didn't. And the thing is, we've all got access to media now, so we can look it up. Mm-hmm. So, I'm sure I'm not the only person in Australia that went digging. I'm sure I'm not the only person in Australia that went digging.
It presented then that Reynold had this kind of inspiration that is based on nothing and purely the inspiration that they gave them at the time to create this dish. And I'm not saying that what he did wasn't amazing, because it fucking was.
No, it's absolutely
theatre and the skill level. But for me, it detracted from it, because it's like, okay, it's disingenuous here. There's just
and it's not. And again, I don't think it's him being disingenuous.
No,
I think the editing was disingenuous to him and sort of made it look like. Again, I have no doubt that he sort of mentioned it at some point. And again, we didn't want him to say, oh no, I've done this before and cheapen it. All was hey, just give it a bit of a shout out, because then I got people going, Laura's made pasta dishes off her menu, and I went, and every time she goes, I serve this in the restaurant, it's really popular. I serve this in the restaurant, it's really popular. I made Sarah Claire the other night when she did the tartare. I make this in the restaurant all the time, it's really popular. All these people have called out things they've done in their restaurants, and I love it because they take it in and it demonstrates growth of skill.
Because here's the two things, right? We want to see innovation. We want to see our contestants having fun and, making use of the sandbox they're in. What was put out in the editing was that Reynold had come up with this dish independently, without any, with only his skills and that particular...
The idea of the book. And it was like the first time he'd ever had that thought.
Whereas what this tale could have been is that Reynolds I did this whole Alice in Wonderland degustation, and I had this idea and I never got to put into fruition because it just didn't fit.
But I think I've worked it out.
I think I've worked it out and I want to do it.
And I think that's a better story. I actually think that's a better story than just randomly coming up with random shit on the fly.
Yeah.
This idea of, you know what, I've done all this other stuff. But there's one thing that is so out there that with time to practice it, I couldn't have done it. And I think I'm going to have a go at it today, because we've talked about that idea of experimenting and trying.
Yeah.
And that plays that narrative beautifully.
Because if you hold that dish, his down the rabbit hole dish, against his chocolate log that he served, it was just called a chocolate log.
Yeah.
And it was just a chocolate log. It was the most simplistic kind of dessert in comparison to this fucking masterpiece he just
and if you have a look as well, and the other thing is, and I didn't get to say this online, and I'll explain why in a moment. So if you put it up against the dishes on the degustation, what he made last night was light years clear of what he made in the degustation. It was light years clear, and he had more time to work on the degustation dishes.
Yep.
So we're not saying anything other than it was a fucking masterpiece. What I became concerned about was the fact that you can't make comments that are perceived to be not 100% in favour of contestant X, Y, or Z at the moment without just getting smashed from... I had people demanding proof of photos. They wanted photographic evidence. They wanted me to document all my claims. I did. They weren't happy. They asked me questions. I provided the tweet where I'd actually said what I said. They ignored everything in the tweet that was said and instead went back down the rabbit hole, literally, to turn around and go, well, yeah, but you're saying he's cheating. And I went, no, In no way, shape or form have I ever said that.
How is that cheating?
They've
been working in this field now for years. Like, there's going to be shit and skills that they've done before that they're going to redo in the fucking Masterchef kitchen. This is not reinvent the wheel, Masterchef.
To give you an idea, I tweeted out about removing the tweet. I put down that it's a different dish, but I've posted a link to the article around the Alice in Wonderland themed degustation, and the immediate message I got afterwards was, where's a picture of the dish? Immediately. So people were not reading. I then explained, look, I said at first this was what happened, that I remembered the name, the description's a different dish, and we just mentioned that. Also, we said no issue, just mentioned you did an Alice degustation, and then there was this long rant about how Laura's done pasta and no one ever calls her out on that bullshit.
And it's very different because, like, you mentioned on Twitter as well that, you know, Khan's done the...
Yep, I Clyde Cucker, yeah, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
I said Khan did that dish as well.
No one said boo.
We've talked about the fact that people have done dishes from their restaurants. It's not a problem.
Or on TV shows.
Yeah, or on TV shows. What became the problem for me personally, this is a personal thing, because you weren't watching it looking at the Twitter. No. I was. You got to enjoy the dish.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy the moment of the dish, and when everyone was getting emotional and looking at it and going, oh my God, that's amazing. And you got to enjoy that. I didn't enjoy the dish. I have zero enjoyment of that dish. It is wonderful. It is a masterpiece. I have zero enjoyment of it because basically anything that was said last night about Reynold led to me being accused of hating Reynold, downplaying Reynold, saying that Reynold was a cheat, saying that Reynold had no technique, saying Reynold had no skill. Laura's done things, you know, which is a very common answer to everything, by the way. Who the fuck cares what Laura's done at this point in time? I certainly don't. And all of these people just bombarding us with this idea of you're lying and shit-stirring. And I didn't get to enjoy the dish. I'm going to rewatch it this weekend.
So you can actually enjoy it because it is phenomenal. And the care and the skill that he put into that to create it, you know, and the judges' enjoyment of it, because it wasn't just pretty. It had substance to it too. What
I would just like to sort of suggest to people is that we have to be allowed to have an open discussion. If I'm bagging him out and saying Reynolds horrible and doesn't know what he's doing and he just cheats all the time,
which is absolute bullshit,
you can call me on that. That is not a problem at all.
Call anyone on that bullshit.
Call anyone on that shit. Yeah, but we do. But people are allowed to have contestants they really like. Mm-hmm. People are allowed to, and all I did was ask a question. I said, I think this is a dish he's done before. This is what I think it is. Then I followed it up with, okay, not exactly the dish, but he's had the concept before.
Yeah.
That was it. And then it was like, it's clearly a different dish. People aren't reading context. People aren't reading tweets. People are just attacking for the sake of attacking. And if we can't actually talk about contestants, it makes the online conversation hard. Mm. It makes it really hard to have an online conversation. And what took away from it for me was I thought everyone last night was magnificent. Obviously, Reynold was significantly better. But it sort of took away a little bit because it just now makes you sort of, and I'm not going to lie, I was happy we didn't record the podcast last night because I did not know how I was going to do that last night without getting really shitty. And I haven't been looking forward to recording this today.
Do you think you know on Twitter?
No. And you know just as well as...
It's okay to take a break.
No, I have been taking breaks, but it's fine.
Yeah.
But you know just as well as I do that I run towards the podcast.
Yeah.
Right? I'm desperate to do the podcast.
You're the one like, you're going, are you dead? We can still do the podcast.
Yeah.
If you've got a heartbeat, you'll be fine. Like,
and last night I was relieved to not have to do it. And like today, all day in my head, I've been going, how do I have this conversation knowing full well we'll put an episode out and somebody will listen to this episode, have umbrage with what we're going to say about Reynold or what I'm going to say about Reynold and go to town on it. And where I've come to in that is I know what I said. I know that what I said was a simple series of questions and a simple series of statements, none of which were critical. And I don't really give a shit if people are going to make comments on the back of this podcast.
As you shouldn't.
Because it's going to happen at the moment. There are people out there who are trolling on ridiculous levels. And there are people out there who cannot take any thought that someone might not agree with their stance on a dish or a person. And
should that be their stand on a dish?
Or their stand on a dish. And look, I didn't want to bring the tone down on this one because it is a magnificent dish, but it's just really hard to enjoy it. It's very hard to enjoy it. And
look, it's wonderful that people are so passionate and have a big fandom and get excited about what someone produces. It's just when fandoms go toxic, it's not pleasant.
And again, it was more the fact that people, then I would send the reply explaining, look at this next tweet, read it. And there'd be no reading. There would just be another series of diatribes about how horrible I was as a person. And how Reynold was far more talented than I ever would be.
Well, in the dessert making department,
he's right.
They're right.
I'm not very good at desserts. There is one more deeply important point to make on this whole thing. One more deeply important point.
What?
The round table's dead.
The round table is, alas, gone.
And we said that the other week. It's going to be distancing. I still stand by what we said last podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst thing to come out of COVID. I mean, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who have, died of this fucking disease.
Bigger table, round table, Lazy Susan.
Look, that's a possibility.
We could do it. We talked about it last podcast. I think it's an answer.
Well, if we can just get it to production, maybe Chester's listening and has some
Maybe Chester's got some answers. Interestingly enough, while I was being attacked last night, Chester laid off. So thank you, Chester.
Thank you for taking a rest, Chester.
It's fantastic. I really appreciate the fact that you took a break from abusing me long enough.
He's like, you've got the Reynold fans on you. I will say you've got enough on your plate.
I won't wish that evil upon anyone.
Yeah.
Someone
I saw lay an egg over here.
It was like I saw someone else who I know on Twitter who was about to ask a question about Reynold, and I literally messaged them directly and went, "You don't want that evil. Don't do it. You don't want that evil on you. Don't message about Reynold."
Yeah.
So look, that's this week's episode. If you want a better recap of last night, check out Ben Pobji. He can talk about Reynold and doesn't really care if he gets abused or not. So enjoy that. That's his recap will be a lot better.
Don't abuse Ben.
Don't abuse Ben. No, look, I feel like Mr. Burns. I can take the slings and arrows, but leave poor Blinky out of this. And in this case, Ben's Blinky. So look. I again, Reynolds' dish was magnificent. It was amazing. It was wonderful. I look forward to enjoying it this weekend with that Twitter vitriol coming towards me. Mm-hmm. That'll be fantastic. So we've now got Amelia and Reynold on the gantry.
Okay, if we thought Amelia by herself is good gantry, imagine Amelia and Reynold.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
This is going to be
understatement of the set. You can hear production going, oh, shit.
There's probably just feeding them cue cards beforehand. So, Reynold, we need you to
They're giving them knock-knock jokes. They've both got knock-knock jokes up there. Now, this week, obviously, Sunday night, they're lining it up as a bit of a tearjerker.
Goes home.
And I mean, that's before they say that Jess is going to make a ice cream featuring basil and licorice.
Oh.
And I like both those things, by the way, but I don't know if I'd like them together.
Oh, I'm worried about Jess. I don't want to think about it because at this moment in time, it's kill your darlings. Like everyone in that.
It's horrendous. The 11 is going to be horrendous.
Deserves to be there and has a lot to give.
Yeah, so. Losing the 11 is going to be horrendous. But, that's the nature of the competition. Someone's going home, and when someone goes home, may we all be gracious about it.
Yes.
So until next week, where we might, I'm not going to say too much more, but we might have a bit of a surprise for you. Mm-hmm. I'm still Chris.
And I'm still Kristie.
We'll catch you all later.
Off with their heads.